A man stands at the edge of a cliff. On one side, calm water, still, silent. On the other, a roaring fire, demanding, consuming. And between them is you. To the man who sees you as an option, your presence is like a breeze, pleasant, but passing. To the man who sees you as the one, your absence feels like an earthquake beneath his feet. This is not about love stories. It's about awareness, about how a man's actions reveal where you truly stand, not through words, but through energy, through effort, through attention. Some women ask, if he likes me, why is he so distant? If I matter, why does he disappear? But here's the truth. When a man sees you as optional, he behaves as if you are replaceable. And when a man sees you as sacred, he behaves as if you are irreplaceable. The difference is not in what he says. It's in what he prioritizes when you're not watching. So the question is not why is he acting like this? The question is, what role have I been unknowingly assigned in his inner world? Shall we look deeper? When a man meets a woman, something invisible begins to form in his mind, a scale, not of beauty, not of charm, but of value. And value is determined not by what is said, but by what is felt in her presence. This is the first silent truth, is a man always calibrates how much to give based on what he thinks he might lose. If he senses you'll stay regardless, his effort fades. If he senses you might walk away with dignity, his focus sharpens. This is not manipulation. This is biology. This is psychology. This is energetic law. We chase what we feel slipping. We neglect what feels guaranteed. A man may not even realize he's doing it, but his actions follow the pull of perceived value, and perceived value always sits on an internal scale. Imagine these two women message a man. One always replies first, always says, "Yes," always available. The other replies when she's truly present. She's kind, but not chasing. She listens, but doesn't overextend. Her time feels sacred. Now pause. Which woman do you think triggers his deeper instinct? Which one starts to weigh more on his internal scale? It is not the one who gives more, but the one who values herself more. We live in an age of over-availability, instant responses, digital validation, effortless attention. Yet men still long for depth, not performance but presence, not perfection but mystery. And mystery isn't about withholding, it's about being rooted. Is like a mountain monk who doesn't leave his temple to beg for visitors. He simply remains, and those seeking peace find their way to him. You may think, but I was loyal, I gave everything, and still he treated me like an option. So yes, is because giving everything often comes from fearing we are not enough. That fear, silent, invisible, transmits. And the more you try to earn love, the more you signal that your love is conditional upon his approval. But here is the Shaolin truth. What is offered without inner stillness becomes noise. What is offered from stillness becomes power. A man senses the difference. He may not speak it, but when your energy feels like a still lake, not grasping, not probing, he begins to feel something rare, that you are not there to be chosen, you are there to choose. So begin to observe, not what he says, but how he invests his time, his presence, his consistency. Ask not, does he love me? Ask instead, how does he treat what he fears to lose? Because in the quiet, you will always see the truth. To the mind, you are an option. To the heart, you are the one. And to the soul, you must first become whole. There is a saying in the temple. Where energy flows is life reveals its priorities. This is true for the body. This is true for the breath. And this is especially true in relationships. A man's attention is not just time, it is energy. Energy either moves towards you with intention or pulls away with quiet detachment. And this movement is not random. It's a reflection of what he feels beneath the surface. In the beginning, he takes first. He listens deeply. His plans include you. There is presence. There is effort. There is a natural investment. But over time, you notice something shift. He no longer reaches out as often. The calls become shorter. He becomes more distracted even when he's with you. You feel like you're talking to someone who's drifting. And here is the emotional paradox. He's still there, but something in him has already left. Modern love is filled with distractions, stress from work, overthinking, social media scrolling, and the silent craving for novelty that comes from dopamine-driven culture. It's easy to confuse these habits with a lack of care, but in truth, the issue is deeper. It is not that he no longer cares. It's that he no longer feels called to show up fully. Why? Because he has not anchored his energy in this connection. A man who sees you as optional is like a candle in the wind, flickering, fading, unsure. He gives only when it's convenient. He listens only when he has nothing better to do. His presence feels conditional. But a man who sees you as the one invests differently. His energy becomes like a mountain stream, quiet, steady, nourishing, not always loud, not always dramatic, but consistent. He doesn't withdraw when he's tired. He includes you in his silence. He doesn't vanish when life gets hard. He draws closer, not with words, but with presence. Here is where many women begin to feel pain. They sense the withdrawal, but blame themselves. Maybe I'm not interesting enough. Maybe I'm too much. Maybe I should give more. And in that moment, you begin to overcompensate for what you did not cause. You send more texts. You forgive more distance. You shrink your needs. But what if I told you, the more you chase a man's lost energy, the more he withholds it, because energy cannot be demanded. It must be invited. Shaolin wisdom teaches this. The flower does not bloom by pulling at its petals. It blooms by being rooted in still soil. In the same way, you do not secure love by chasing effort. You secure your peace by observing where energy flows and where it fades. You must become like still water so you can see clearly. If his energy retreats, you do not chase, you do not beg, you watch. And in that clarity, a deeper truth will emerge. Love is not proven by proximity. It is proven by presence. And presence cannot be faked. There is a fire inside every man. But not every man knows what it burns for. Some burn for attention, some for ego, some for nothing at all. But the rarest ones, they burn for what they're willing to protect. This is the warrior instinct. And it reveals itself not in what he says he values, but in what he fights for when it's at risk. When a man sees you as an option, he becomes passive. He lets the day stretch without contact. He lets problems linger unresolved. He delays. He avoids. He disappears. He does not fight, because in his mind, there is nothing sacred to protect. He is not threatened by the loss, because he was never fully present in the gain. But when a man sees you as the one, his energy shifts. He becomes alert. He notices when something feels off. He acts sometimes clumsily, sometimes imperfectly, but he acts because to the warrior, silence is not peace. It's a warning. In today's world, the modern man is often disarmed. He's told to suppress his instincts. He's taught to be passive in the name of being chill. He's conditioned to believe that detachment equals strength. But detachment is not strength. Avoidance is not peace. A true warrior isn't emotionless. He's focused. He feels deeply, but doesn't get lost. He moves with restraint, but not with hesitation. When he sees you as sacred, he sharpens his awareness, not because you asked, but because he cares. Picture this: a monk walking a mountain path. He hears a rustle behind him. He doesn't panic. He pauses, listens, turns with calm precision. That's the energy of a man who is aware of what matters. Now contrast this with the man who sleeps through the danger or avoids the path altogether. This is the difference between passive love and protective devotion. Many women today are exhausted, not because they expect perfection, but because they are constantly wondering, would he even notice if I pulled away? Would he come for me if I stopped trying? This quiet fatigue of always being the one who holds the thread is not sustainable. You cannot carry both the heart and the sword. You are not meant to fight to be kept. A man who sees you as the one doesn't wait to lose you to realize your worth. He moves when you grow distant. He speaks when you go quiet. He acts when he senses you're slipping through the silence, not because he's afraid of being alone, but because something inside him says, I will not lose what brings me closer to peace. As Shaolin wisdom says, a warrior sharpens his blade, not to harm, but to honor what he protects. When you are seen as the one, you don't have to ask for effort. The effort arrives in how he listens, how he adjusts, how he learns to hold space. And the greatest sign, he begins to self-correct. You don't have to teach him your worth. He begins to remember it on his own. There are two kinds of silence in a relationship. One heals, one harms, and both feel the same at first. Quiet, still, empty. But silence is never just an absence of sound. It is the presence of energy, or the lack of it. This is where most confusion begins. When a man sees you as an option, his silence becomes a wall, not a boundary, a barrier. It doesn't protect space for growth. It distances without explanation. It leaves you in uncertainty. You wait for a message that doesn't come. You send something kind and receive a one-word reply. You ask, "Are you okay?" and get silence again. You begin to feel invisible. And yet, he says nothing is wrong. This is the silence that harms, not because it's quiet, but because it's disconnected. Now contrast this. A man who sees you as the one also needs silence, also needs space. But the difference is in the energy that remains. His silence is not cold, it is sacred. It is a pause, not a punishment. Like a monk in walking meditation, he may not speak, but his awareness never leaves the path. He doesn't vanish. He withdraws consciously to reflect, to center, to protect the peace you share. And most importantly, you still feel him there. In modern relationships, we are trained to fear silence. We associate it with disinterest, with rejection, with abandonment. But Shaolin wisdom teaches a true connection does not vanish in stillness. It deepens beneath the noise. The problem is not space. It's the absence of presence within that space. You can sit beside a man for hours and feel alone, or you can be miles apart and feel completely held if his energy remains clear. So how do you know the difference? Watch for spiritual distance. It's not physical. It's not logistical. It's the emotional posture he takes when things grow quiet. Does he retreat and forget you? Or does he return more grounded, more intentional? Does he shut down to avoid or step back to grow? In one, the silence is avoidance. In the other, it's devotion. A man who sees you as the one uses silence not to punish, But to protect, he gives space without breaking connection. He honors your need for peace without withdrawing love. He walks away from conflict to cool the fire, not to burn the bridge. And when he returns with clarity. You don't have to decode it. You feel it. His absence taught him something. And now he brings it back to you. So ask yourself gently, is his silence creating safety or uncertainty? Is the space between you filled with reflection or with neglect? Because in sacred connection, space does not create distance. It creates depth. Love is not a feeling. It is a discipline. And devotion is not intensity. It is consistency. The world today celebrates grand gestures, the flowers, the confessions, the fireworks, but these are moments, not foundations. What sustains a relationship? What separates being option from being the one is not what happens in the highs, but how a man behaves in the ordinary silence between them. Devotion is not loud. It is a rhythm. It shows up in how he listens without needing to solve, in how he remembers the small details, in how he protects your peace, even when no one is watching. And this kind of love requires discipline, not emotional control in the rigid sense, but emotional maturity, the ability to stay present, focused, accountable, even when life is messy, even when stress rises, even when no validation is being offered in return. Think of a monk on the mountain. He wakes at the same hour, trains with the same breath, repeats the same form over and over again, not because someone is watching, but because his inner life demands it. Devotion, in its truest form, is when a man chooses your well-being, even when it's inconvenient. He texts not just to maintain connection, but to anchor it. He doesn't perform love, he practices it. But this isn't always easy to see at first. In a world filled with attention, chasing, the quiet man may seem boring. He's not always expressive. He may not flood you with compliments, but his consistency becomes a kind of safety. You begin to trust that he won't vanish when you're not performing. And that trust is the root of peace. Many men confuse desire with discipline. They feel strongly, they pursue quickly, but they lack the structure to sustain what they chase. They get overwhelmed by your complexity, frustrated by your emotions, exhausted by your growth, and instead of leaning in, they shut down. Not because they don't feel love, but because they haven't trained their inner life to carry it. Shaolin teaching reminds us, to carry water daily is more sacred than to worship the well once. A man who sees you as the one carries the water of the relationship, not just when it's new, not just when it's easy, but when it's quiet and uncelebrated and slow. He shows up. Even when he doesn't feel like it, he adjusts. Even when you don't ask, he keeps his word. Even when no one is keeping score. This is not romanticism. This is discipline. And that's what separates a man who is excited by the idea of you from the man who is ready for the weight of you. So when you ask yourself if a man truly values you, look not to what he says when he wants you, but to what he does when keeping you requires effort. Because a man who is capable of devotion treats love like a sacred practice. There is a quiet truth that many avoid. Every relationship you allow teaches others how to treat you. Not with your words, not with your desires, but with your boundaries, your energy, your standards in silence. And if you're not fully conscious, you begin to train others to give you less by accepting less again and again. In Shaolin practice, a student bows before entering the training hall, not because the hall demands submission, but because the bow is a declaration of self-respect. It says, I am present, I am worthy, I am ready. And just like that ritual is, every moment you choose how to respond to mistreatment is a quiet bow, either toward your peace or away from it. So many women today carry the ache of not being chosen. They overgive, they overexplain. They shrink to fit a man's comfort zone, hoping he'll finally see their worth. But here's the paradox. The more you abandon yourself to keep someone, the more you signal to them that you're not worth keeping. And this is not your punishment. It is your invitation to awaken. Modern culture teaches us to chase compatibility. But Shaolin wisdom asks, why seek alignment in places that dishonor your center? A man may not always be conscious of what he's doing, but he feels how much you tolerate. He notices what you excuse, and his subconscious calibrates. This is how far I can go. This is how much I need to show up. You're not only accepting behavior, you're shaping it. And here lies your quiet power. Every time you don't chase, you teach presence. Every time you pause, instead of reacting, you teach emotional awareness. Every time you uphold your boundaries, gently but firmly, you teach respect. You don't do this by punishing. You do this by standing still, by becoming the mountain. Not moving to be seen, but being so centered that others must rise to meet you. A woman grounded in her worth is not hard to love. She is hard to mistreat. Not because she's cold, but because her peace is no longer for sale. She doesn't raise her voice to be heard. She lowers her availability to be honored. She doesn't try to fix a man. She observes who he becomes in the face of her self-respect. Shaolin teaching reminds us, what you allow becomes your practice. What you practice becomes your path. So ask yourself gently, have I been teaching others to honor me or to overlook me? Have I been asking for peace while choosing chaos? You do not need to become harsh, just clear. You do not need to become distant, just rooted. Because when a man sees that you will not chase, that you will not beg, that you will not shrink, he will either rise into presence or fall away into silence. And either way, you stay whole. A man's actions are only the shadow. What matters is what casts it. The fact is, when you choose silence over chasing, presence over performance, stillness over survival, you become the mirror he cannot escape. You do not need to speak louder to be heard. You only need to stand where the noise cannot reach. Like a mountain that never begs the wind to stay, you simply remain whole, aware, enough,